NNN has just reported that a routine search for Jesus' birth certificate shows that he was actually born outside of the United States and smuggled into the country.
The woman is quoted as saying, "Really, all I want are things back the way they were."
It was here 31 years ago that Joseph Sr. and his then girlfriend Mary took their infant son Jesus across this border, hidden in an orange crate.
News that Jesus crossed the Mexican border and into the United States sometime in the late 60s is cause for celebration here in La Ciudad. They have always felt a certain connection with the one they call Jesus.
Mississippi with the Reverend Jesse Jackman. Now he's just found out that Jesus may actually be Hispanic. What do you have to say?
Well, we knew, we have known, I have had knowledge of and around and through the fact that Jesus was a drop Hispanic.
It's common knowledge for years that Jesus' parents were fleeing a repressive political situation, but the country of origin has always remained a mystery.
His heritage may also prove to help Jesus' election chances, as news of it might help to pry some Latino votes away from Gore in toughly contested Southern California.
However, we feel certain that the fact that the individual will bear us out, that his primary genetic makeup was a combination of Egyptian and possibly one or two northern African nations that due to infighting do not have names but reside in predominantly black postal zones as recognized by the United Nations.
Do you see it as a setback?
It's a temporary setback, calling the black community to take a reflectionary step back, recognize the conspiratorial nature of the feedback before we make our triumphant comeback. You will see vindication if there is no assassination.
Thank you, Reverend Jackman. Reporting live, this is Letitia Baker. Back to you in the studio, Jean.
It is too early to tell what the reaction will be amongst Anglos, who have for years described and depicted Jesus as white. Tad Stalwart is live at a hockey game with the latest.
Do rumors that Jesus could be black bother you?
I don't know, man. Looks white to me.
Does he play hockey?
And if his body's a temple, let me worship there.
Oh my God.
You know, he's got the whole fashion vibe down.
You don't realize that there are encrypted codes seeping into your brain.
Yeah, and these designers today, they think you can only be fashionable through them with their overpriced frocks.
What's up with that?
Judas Iscariot has been found dead in the same Washington, D.C. park in which Vince Foster died, in what was then called a suicide.
Jesus shows us that there is a simple, natural way to make a very fashionable statement.
Wait a second. He could actually be our salvation from the tired retro 70s.
However, in light of tonight's events, the Foster case may be reopened.
And I bet you people are tired of the same look over and over again. And you know, people aren't even aware of the cultural events that inspired it.
You're called posers with no passion, all right?
Look, I've probably said too much already.
Did you check out that jacket he busted out at the upper room the other night?
That cool wool cloak with the random-looking Darwinian fish pattern thing going on? It's like he was saying, get your own symbol, people.
You'll be the Order your tape and CD now.
Well, we gotta fly.
Yeah, our time is up.
I'm Nikki Knack.
And I'm Patty Wax. Peace out.
For those of you just joining us this morning, Jesus Christ was kidnapped several hours ago.
Jesus is being held captive in the 747 you see behind me.
Judas may have been involved in a plot to capture or possibly kill Jesus. It's not being overlooked, however, that Jesus may have been a willing co-conspirator, since for the last several weeks, he's been hinting that just such an event...
A negotiating team, we've been told, is already considering the kidnappers' demands, which no doubt include clearance to take off from the tower.
Suspicions have arisen largely because this alleged abduction comes on the heels of news that Jesus may have entered this country...
So glad it's not my son.
Where several nights ago, Jesus was overheard in one of his last conversations with Judas as saying, "Do what you have to, just do it quickly."
I'd like to express my heartfelt concern to his mother Mary, to his brother Joe Jr., who through a series of conversations I've come to have a profound respect for, as well as the rest of the Christ family. Hillary, my wife, has suffered greatly today as a result of his capture. She feels like this is all just a bad dream.
Possible that Jesus was aware even then that the Star was running a story about his illegal status, as well as ties to an Egyptian radical group.
Against his will, or is simply resigned to his fate. The State Department contacted Simon Peter several times, but he stated repeatedly that this is not the Jesus he knew. Consequently, I'm going to leave the decision of this matter to the FAA.
Well, hasn't President Clinton and the FAA had problems in the past?
Yes, they have, and he's put the head of the FAA, Michael Herod, in a very difficult position. Clinton pretends to defer to Herod's wisdom, though clearly he is avoiding making this controversial decision.
FAA head Michael Herod has announced that he is unable to allow what has been dubbed Flight 666 to take off because the pilot on board has not cooperated with basic flight information needed for clearance. He's turning the matter back to the president.
This is the kind of political ping pong the president was hoping to avoid. He has asked Congress to convene in an emergency bipartisan meeting. Nobody's quite sure who the kidnappers are, if they are from a country we have established relations with. It also should go without saying that nobody wants to be found guilty of getting a presidential candidate killed.
Congress is obviously reacting to a lot of things. Probably the main thing is that they see this as an opportunity to get this back to a traditional Republican-Democratic race by eliminating the front runner, Jesus.
Congress has drafted and approved an expulsion bill for persons or organizations of unknown origin on U.S. soil. This is a kind of don't ask, don't tell bill, which basically allows for the expulsion of a person or group, no questions asked.
Oh, definitely. Support on the Hill from even evangelicals is dwindling rapidly. Nobody wants to be on the wrong side of this if, heaven forbid, Jesus were to be a traitor.
They didn't kidnap Jesus. He kidnapped them via alien mind control. On the Venusian transponder pods, beings will conduct crypto-cybersonic experimentation, resulting in virtual pseudo-figmentational research.
Presidential hopes are shot.
Well, nobody's seen the fat lady yet, although I might add I did see a congressional page running through the hall in a wig and a purple robe. Anyway, I think that the respect, and might I add fear, that these members of Congress have for Jesus even now is evident.
Well, how so, Pepsi?
Look, members of Congress see this as an opportunity to rid themselves of this wild child once and for all. If by some godforsaken miracle he were elected, it seems his first order of business would be to drastically downsize and decentralize the government.
Thus eliminating a lot of the power these people are used to wielding.
Exactly.
President, a mere weeks away from leaving office, President Clinton has said that he is vetoing the expulsion bill and sending it back to Congress.
As no surprise to members of Congress who have used this time to find the needed votes for an override of the veto. They may have found that vote in Rudolph Childs of Connecticut. Senator Childs has been the subject of a fierce recall campaign in recent weeks after it was learned he is helping obtain the release of mass murderer Matt Barabbas from state prison in exchange for campaign funds.
When asked what he was hiding, 45% thought it was his sexuality, 35% his illegal immigration, and 20% something to do with his father's background, which he often refers to in vague terms.
That the voters will stop the recall over the murderer's release if the senator votes for the expulsion of Jesus, who they believe would be against continued funding of local nuclear submarine work.
It is with a heavy heart that I sign this emergency bill. I want to go on record as saying that I wanted to name Jesus my Surgeon General as one of my final...
Jesus! Good PR, yes.
I believe in his innocence and resent those outsiders who seek to seize our freedoms. I will not pilot this country into a conflict for the sake of just one man. Consequently, I wash my hands.
Look, President Clinton is now in a position where he can work on how history remembers him. If Jesus turns out to be just another footnote in history, well, it'll hardly matter that Clinton was a sympathizer.
That sound you hear in the background is flight number 666, taking off for an unknown destination. Rumors are that the kidnappers will be broadcasting a live video feed from inside the plane once they're at cruising altitude. News services from across the globe are scrambling to find foreign correspondents.